Hello, good evening. It's always nice to be back with these topics, better sex, better life. So today we have Jasmine with us. I think after having Facebook Live with Jasmine, the response is always very good. That's why she is with us again today. And we always talk about positive sex positivity and sexual empowerment. So Jasmine, maybe you want to introduce yourself again to our audience. Say hi.
Yeah, thanks so much, Yann. Hey, everybody, my name is Jasmine. I am a sex positive advocate based here in KL. And basically, what I am is that I'm really passionate in creating sex positive and sexually empowering spaces and conversations. And I do so through my online platform called Jazz Explains on Instagram and also community events and such.
Yeah, so I think it's real. I love following Jasmine's IG, and there's so much of education is being done there. Sometimes this conversation is not spoken enough. I think we should always normalize sexual conversation, especially healthy adults talking about this, because this is quite an important part of our life. So maybe Jasmine, you can also tell us what is actually sex positivity and how can we actually practice it ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question. So sex positivity essentially is this idea that embracing sex, sexuality, and our bodies are actually inherently healthy and it's normal. That consent and respect is important to have in any relationship, whether it be like a romantic relationship or like friendship or like whatever it is. Consent and boundaries are very important, and that we respect others and we respect their choice in choosing whatever sexuality or whatever lifestyle that they kind of want to do, in that they do it consensually. And there's a huge emphasis within the sex positive community of the importance of education, right? Like when we talk about sex education, a lot of the times people get like, oh my god, you're teaching my children all these things, but it's actually about empowering them. And so that's what sex positivity is about.
Yeah, and I think because when when we talk about sexual education, a lot of times it's always safety, like STD, pregnancy, and hardly talking about empowerment, hardly talking about pleasure or even relationship, right? So especially in a country like us, with very conservative family, how do you think we can how can we uh, how to say promote sex positivity in the family?
I think, like, I mean, when it comes to family, I was talking to my mother about this, about how she was very worried when when I was very young and I started asking questions like, where do babies come from, or like when I was having my period, and she get like really scared because she doesn't want to say the wrong thing, so it's completely
Yeah.
understandable. I think it's just about kind of encouraging these sort of conversations of like, oh, what is the name, like start basic, what is the name of our body parts, and just coming in when actually you're talking about sex education and all of that, coming in from a place of like, this is about protecting our children, or this is about protecting each other, rather than teaching them to do the bad things. So when you come from the angle of like, I would like to protect so that they become empowered, so that they know what is safe and unsafe touches, and then you can kind of come in and have this like healthy conversation of sexuality and sex positivity when you come from that angle and
Yeah.
empowerment.
Yeah, so I think that's really important because a lot of people might have a lot of sexual trauma growing up because not knowing what to do and don't know consent about and boundaries as well. And I think also in a culture like us, there's a lot of shame
Yeah.
in talking about sexual, right? So I remember, I think most of the family they will say, oh, don't touch your penis, shame, shame. Or
Mm.
when you're naked, you say, oh, shame, shame, always like shame, 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 shame. And it's like it makes the children thinking that your
Their
sexual organ
body.
is something very
Yes.
shameful. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
how can we actually better educate the next generation on this to avoid all this sexual shame and sexual trauma?
I think the most important thing before we even educate others, before we even educate the next generation or people around us, I think it's really important for us to sort of not so much educate ourselves, but kind of re-educate ourselves, unlearn all that we've been taught, from our childhood, years and years of this shame, years and years of this, trauma or like these ideas, to just really unlearn all of that. And I'm not saying that it takes so fast, like you can just like that, but it does take a while for you to unlearn. Every time someone tells you something, you have to remind yourself like, okay, that's not the right way, or we should look at it a different way. So I think once you sort of do that within yourself, and I personally do this by having conversations with people. Oh, why do we as a society think this way? Or like I listen to podcasts, sexually empowering, sex positive podcasts. So I start from myself, and then when I'm sort of confident enough, sort of having these thoughts and being empowered within myself, and then only was I confident enough to then talk to other people, especially my cousins, my younger cousins. I talk to them about all these things and try to also like my family and stuff like that, and then friends as well. So it starts from within lah, is basically what I'm saying.
So I think it's always a learning, right? Even me myself, I think we wanted to normalize sexual conversation, and sometimes we really don't know what is normal and what is maybe over the boundaries. So I think when we talk about it, we learn, like what are the words more appropriate, and what are the things to share which is more appropriate, and what are the things that you should get people's consent, and you should set certain boundaries. So I think the more you talk about it, the more you are being empowered, the more you will be clearer about boundaries and consent. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what are the expectations between men and women. Social expectation.
Yeah, I think like when I thought about this question, I thought about we can look into it in a different way. So, I mean, since today we're talking about sexual empowerment, I think social expectation between men and women, in that, like, for men in our culture, in the context of Malaysia, because this is essentially what I know best as in Malaysia where I grew up, is that, for men, there's this expectation of you need to be manly. And I think it's the same throughout all the different countries and cultures. That you have to be manly, that you have to be a certain amount, you have to, probably sleep with a certain amount of people, of women, in order for you to be manly. And, you need to know your way. You need to like be, you should know you shouldn't be shy. And if you're shy about it, then you're not manly enough. I think that's like the expectation that men, like, you need to be able to perform, right? You need to have a particular size to your body part too. And I think like with women, I think there's a lot. I think when I was younger, when we were younger, there's a lot of priority about purity, to be pure, to be a virgin, and that if you are not pure, if you're not a virgin, therefore you are useless, or your deem is worthless. And and I think also like nowadays, I mean, in the media, you can see stories of women after they get married, and then there's this pressure of like being desirable to your husband so that they don't run away, and so there's a lot of these creams around, and you're not even sure if they're safe.
So I think both women and men has their pressure as well, like you say, when talking about men able to perform, and then being mentally and things like that is also a very strong pressure. And I think there's so many men facing performance anxiety nowadays. Okay, so maybe you can, since today's our topic is about sexual empowerment, maybe you can tell the audience a bit what is actually sexual empowerment.
Yeah, so I guess like sexual empowerment is quite subjective. I think it means different things to different people. For me personally, sexual empowerment is when you're free to express your sexual interests. You're free to express your sexual needs. You feel confident in your own body. You're not afraid to say yes or no. And, you prioritize your safety and your comfort and your pleasure over other people. So, you are not taken advantage of, and you're not also taking advantage of other people. So you're kind of comfortable in that way. And if anyone were to say something, or anyone were to practice whatever they preach or whatever like that, you're not triggered. You're just like, this is my boundaries. So your boundaries and your values are really strong. So that is what sexual empowerment means to me, essentially.
So how does sexual empowerment actually ties to sexual positivity?
Yeah. So with sex positivity, it's about embracing sex and sexuality, and sort of, looking at it as it is, healthy and it's normal. And I guess it ties in. I guess it just goes hand in hand. When sex positivity is about being comfortable, it's about being confident. So sexual empowerment is part of sex positivity, and I guess it all like kind of intertwine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess with sex positivity, we don't believe in fear-based sex education. We believe in empowering people. And so
Yes.
that's how they kind of like link
Yeah.
together.
So you need to be empowered to feel positive, right? So
Yeah.
are you always like this? Are you always this positive about sex and this empowered? Or how does this journey reach up to today you feel empowered?
I would say I was not as empowered. I mean, it's kind of like a journey, as you said. Like when I was younger, I was not empowered enough, but I also realized there's a lot of problems that I see within my growing up, within my environment, that I didn't like, that the girls my age when I was a teenager, that they were pressured into doing something, or even the boys were pressured to do something, and saying that you're not a guy, like you don't do this and stuff. So I always find that as a problem. So I think gradually, as I grew older and I learned the importance of consent, the importance of boundaries, and the importance of our self-worth, I think that really opened my eyes, especially whenever I leave a partner's house and I feel more disempowered. I feel more yucky with myself, because I did something that I knew I didn't want to do, but I did it because I want to please the other person. And I realized then on there was something wrong. So I needed to change and unlearn all of that, within myself. So I think that's why I do the work that I do, to kind of like let everybody know, like, no, your no matters and your yes matters too.
Yeah. Okay. So I think everybody go through this process, right? When they're young, they really don't know how to react, especially if you're not being taught to, right? So sometimes certain women, I'm just giving an example, you go for a date and maybe you're being pressured to make love, right? Then the society might think that, oh, you are the one who actually go to people's house and things like that. But sometimes it's at that situation you don't know how to react because you don't know better, right? And like you say, maybe going home you feel a bit more disgusted because it's not really what you want. So I think it's really important to talk about it. And I think this education a lot of times come from parents, and a lot of parents actually avoid this topic. But I hope that we really have proper education when it comes to sexual, because this is about relationship, right? You start dating with somebody, when should you give consent, when are you comfortable, and this is not spoken enough. So how can we actually make people feel more empowered?
That's a good one. How can we make people feel more empowered? I think just normalizing the conversation, letting people know that you're actually not alone. I remember when, I was, on the apps, like casually dating, I was, in my mid 20s. And I always thought that I was alone, that like what you said about, oh, you went to people's house, so it should be your fault if they go any further. So I always thought that it was my fault, that I should bear the, whatever that may be. But then I think
Mm,
like the more I have conversations with my girlfriends and learn that
mm,
like actually you're not wrong, babe. Like you like
mm,
yes, you consent to one thing, but if they keep
mm,
pushing you and pushing you, even though you said no, you are actually in the right. So like that
mm.
really then really empowered me in knowing my worth and knowing like, you know what? Yeah, that is true. I said yes and I was very clear with it. Um and so just having these kind of conversations with people, joining or listening into conversations such as these, yeah. So which is why I'm so happy that Beauty and Co is doing this conversation about sexual empowerment, because if
Yeah.
we didn't have this conversation, we wouldn't know. So yeah, have conversations with people, listen into conversation, and also just really know that your no matters and your yes matters. Your boundaries and your values are very important. And you have every right. If your body tells you that there is something wrong and I don't feel safe and I don't feel right, listen to that because it's very, very important.
Yeah. And you can always change your mind. You might say yes initially, and you can say no if you don't feel comfortable. And I
Yes.
think men should be also educated to respect women in that way. No actually means no. No doesn't mean yes.
Yeah.
So,
No doesn't mean it will become yes. No, you
okay.
know, yeah.
So maybe they will try their luck, but again, when you say no, is no. So I think when you grow up, that is there any insecurity when you grow up, or even right now, is there any insecurity related to sexuality as a woman?
Yeah, I think when I was growing up, a lot of my sense of self is so tied up with my sexuality and my body
Mm,
because
mm,
I've always been quite on the plus size
mm,
side, and
mm,
so back in the day when we didn't have social media like what we have today, I was really
mm,
insecure. There's a lot of push for a certain body type that which
mm,
means you're attractive if you have this
mm,
slim
mm,
figure and stuff like that.
mm.
So there was a lot of that. And I think now as an adult, just realizing that they have, people
Sorry.
have so many interests and so many, preferences, and, you're worthy of love, whatever size you are, wherever you are, however you are. I think just knowing that just helped me. But yeah, I mean, nowadays I still am insecure with my weight. I'm still am insecure with, parts of my bodies.
Mm,
But I think also like, I think um, I'm more patient and kinder to myself nowadays. So that
mm.
helps.
So I think body shame is always woman's number one insecurity. Whether you are plus size, you are too petite, your breast is too big, your breast is too small, all sorts of body shame. And I think it also takes time for us to accept ourselves, and also to actually embrace what we who we are, right? So I think we are in the beauty industry. We have seen so many insecurities, whether a person is already so slim but still, and you always see this, especially on younger girls, especially supermodels. Supermodels who already have so good figure, but frankly the most insecurity come from there, because there's so much of comparison, there's so much of high expectation on like looking perfect, right? Like a doll kind of perfect. So I think it also takes time for us to learn to accept ourselves. I think for me, maybe after the age of 30, I think I always like, from as young as maybe 15 years old, I was like, oh, I always want to lose weight. Up to 30 over years old, when I have kids, then I start to embrace the changes in my body, that accept that how we actually are a bit more higher body fat percentage compared to before kids. And still, even though I am happy with my weight, there are still a lot of comments, right? People will say, "Oh, you look better if you're smaller," and things like that. So it also is a journey of accepting yourself, I guess.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it was very interesting that you said about a lot of the times the supermodels that are insecure with themselves. Because I am working within the entertainment industry, so all I see
Yeah.
are like supermodels or like celebrities, and you realize that everybody, regardless of however you are, there's always insecurity, and you can never make everybody happy.
Yes.
So I think that helped me too, lah, in knowing my
Mm,
worth and understanding and valuing
yeah.
myself.
Yeah. So to me, body is all about giving you strength, you're healthy, it's functioning well. I think that we should be grateful of. Of course, I would always say that um, I don't encourage people to eat unhealthily and say, okay, accept who you are, or have a very sedentary lifestyle, because we know that is not healthy. It's just that we should try to have a routine or lifestyle that actually make us healthier, function better, and maybe happier, right? So I think it's that, not so much on how many inch of waistline I have, how perky my butt is, and things like that. And you can see certain people are not healthy because they are malnutrition, or they go on a yo-yo diet, or sometimes they go on certain drugs which will burden their livers and things like that. Actually, it's also unhealthy. So it's really about how can you live healthier and accept yourself better.
100%.
Okay. So what was the discussion on sexuality at home?
There was, I think, the discussion of sexuality at home when I was growing up. I think it's mostly about safety. So a lot
Okay.
of the times it's about safety, like don't. I think like I was raised by a mom with two girls,
Mm.
so me and my sister. So
Mm.
there's a lot of anxiety or worry about
Mm.
being safe. Who do you
Mm.
hang with? What kind of
Mm.
baju, like dresses or like whatever
Mm.
that you
Mm.
wear,
Mm.
and
Mm.
like don't be too close to boys because they only want one
Mm.
thing, which is your body.
Mm.
I think so. It's a lot of fear-based sort of
Uh,
education, I suppose, when I was growing up, and also in school. In school, like teachers and everything, there's all this like insecurity, like, like, oh, your body should look a certain way. So it's
yeah.
mostly that,
Yeah.
then there's a
Yeah.
priority over someone with like nicer body. For example, like, oh, they're skinnier and therefore they are prettier,
Mm.
and you're just like, oh, like I'm not like that.
Mm. So I
Yeah.
think I think for me, I would think my mom did not really educate me in terms of sexuality, but of course, I remember the first time she had a sexual topic with me, because she knows that I'm dating a guy, and she actually says, your first time is very precious, you would want to give it to somebody that really means something to you. So so to me, it's like, yeah, it's really a very good reminder that it's not
Mm.
that I'm restricting you not to have sex, but I'm just telling you this is something precious. You should not just give it away to anyone. Right? So I think,
Yeah.
and of course, safety is always an issue, right? We always talk about
Mhm.
safety, but what I felt um, it's really important to talk about with kids. I mean, to our children, is actually relationship, right? Like at
Yes.
what age, what is appropriate, and maybe, as young as, maybe I remember, as young as kindergarten, I already feel like, oh, I like this boy, right? I don't just want to be with that person, or I just want to hold hands. But that is feelings that we have. But if you
Mhm.
don't talk about it, they will feel like, I think sometimes sometimes certain parents will feel like, oh, love, it will lead to sex. It doesn't need to be that way. It can be just feeling good, and you actually tell them how to differentiate. Maybe it's just friendship. Maybe
Mhm.
it's not love relationship, right? The more you talk about it, about relationship and sexuality, then I think they will have better empowerment and boundaries as well.
Yeah, I
Mm,
think it's also like it's important. I mean, sometimes like when we say like talk about relationship and sex, sometimes we get stuck like what exactly do we talk about? I think like a good gauge. I think for parents out there or just like older siblings or cousins, I
mm,
think teaching them about healthy and unhealthy relationship. Especially now with like social media, there's a lot of stalking and them telling like, if you don't do this, then I'm going to tell your parents that we did all of this. That actually happened to a student that I was talking to. And so yeah, healthy unhealthy relationship and touches, the different types of touches are good to say as
True,
well.
true. And okay, also I think the pressure between a relationship, maybe like you say, for men, people always have this mentality, men only want sex, right? So sometimes I also think the men are very pitiful in a way that every time
Yes.
they want to meet their girlfriend, the girlfriend thinks, oh, you just want sex. But actually, maybe it's not. It's also about connectivity and things like that. And when a woman wants sex too much, they will think that, oh, this woman is very slutty, and maybe this woman is not of purity, I would say. So have you been in a relationship that you actually question your worth?
Yeah. I think I have. I think whenever, again, like I think when it comes to, sex, it's very like obvious if the men wants you or whatever, like they get hard and stuff like that. So, or like they want to have sex, like what you said, men are always conditioned to like, they always, want sex and everything like that. So as women,
Yeah,
we also feel like that's all they want. And so when
yeah,
when partners don't actually do that, when partners don't actually get hard, or when partners don't actually want sex,
yeah,
and then you instantly feel like, oh, is you don't want me anymore? Am I not attractive
yeah,
anymore? And stuff like that. So
yeah.
I think I've learned to be forgiving that everybody has different sort of sexuality and sexual drive and everything like that. So
And
if
imagine,
someone yeah.
and imagine this happened to older people, right? Like let's say there are some divorcee who start dating at 40 or 50, and you expect your partner to be hard on all the time. It's like
Yes,
unrealistic. And if you start
correct.
questioning your worth, oh my god, am I not attractive enough? Why is he not getting hard on? Come on, that
Yeah.
age you don't get hard on all the time.
Exactly. So I mean, I've learned to like, if anybody were to like, come up to me and go like, hey, I really just want to spend time with you. I don't feel like, having sex or stuff like that. Then I'll be like, okay, sure. Like it's not a reflection of my worth. It's not a reflection of anything. It's just them as a person telling me straight up like, I'm feeling quite tired. Or sometimes like I would even ask them like, do you feel like doing this? Or you don't feel like, I mean, I always
Mm,
check in with my partners. I think
mm,
that's something that I'm actively doing to
mm,
my male
mm,
partners. I'm like checking
mm,
in, how are you
mm.
feeling? How's this? Um, so yeah, it's actually very helpful and empowering for both parties to be able to do that.
But do you feel that many people are not able to communicate or articulate well what they really want and what their boundaries are and consent?
Yeah, for sure. I think especially because we've never really been taught about, this, like growing up, it's not really kind of a thing that we're used to. So definitely, I mean, I for sure I learn about boundaries way after, it's one thing to talk about boundaries, is another to enforce it. I think the problem is in
Yes.
the enforcing. Sometimes
Mm,
we tell people like, this is our expectation and everything, but when we actually want to enforce it, we feel very, it's like, I don't feel good lah, or like you feel like the person will reject you if you enforce. So definitely there's an issue, there's a problem, there's a challenge. I would say it's a challenge. It's not the end all. It's still, like I said earlier, a learning curve, right? It's an experience, a
yeah.
journey to learn.
So when we listen to Jasmine's story, like how you grow up, how you date, you also have your challenges, and it's like most of us, right? We come from a very conservative family who don't really talk about sex, and when we talk about sex, it's always about safety. And you also have dated people who make you feel question your worth, and in the whole process, how do you find empowerment?
How do I find empowerment is by really being choosy with who I surround myself with. Like the
Wow.
people that I've chosen, I think, I mean, with regards to sexual partners or romantic
Mm,
partners,
mm,
I think quite recently, being in my 30s, I'm very, very choosy with who I spend my energy with and my time with. The
Yes.
moment someone showed, like I went on a date last weekend, and then this person couldn't
Mm,
take no for an answer and threw a fit and
mm,
got angry.
mm,
I was just like, I'm not going to spend time talking to you. I'm not going to please
mm,
you anymore. I am just going
mm,
to stop talking to you altogether. And so that really was an empowering time for me. I questioned myself for sure. Like I questioned, like, oh, maybe I
mm,
shouldn't have done this, or maybe I was leading them
mm,
on and stuff like that. But at
mm,
the same time,
mm,
when I think about it, when I sit, and of course, talking to girlfriends or talking to even guy friends,
mm,
actually, the guy friends are the ones who are like, no, I think it's not a cool thing what they did. And so that was
mm,
just really empowering for me. So not being afraid to say
mm,
no and not pleasing other people,
mm,
because prioritizing your safety and not pleasing other people just because you don't want them to reject you, that's not good. So just really doing it for yourself. If your gut is telling you something's wrong, then trust in your gut. So my gut
yeah,
from the beginning was already telling me something's wrong about this person.
yeah.
So it was true.
So I think it's actually a lot of um, learning, and take some wisdom to also know what is right and what is wrong. I think, of course, not everybody are sexually empowered or educated, and sometimes they don't really know what is the right thing to do. So there's a difference between you saying no and the person insists in a very polite way and throwing a fit, right? So
Yeah.
the your partner might be also in a learning process on of
Correct.
what is really boundaries and consent. But I think I have also been in a relationship where I broke up with someone, and they asked for, like, can we be friends with benefits, right? And I say, oh no, I'm not interested, you know. So initially was like, oh, they are very nice to you. Then when you're not interested, they are like, oh, saying things like, oh, you are a slut, you are whatever. Then I feel like, if you think I am a slut, I should say yes to your friends with benefits, right? Because I say no, then you think I'm a slut. I think something is not right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think it's all about sometimes it takes time and wisdom for you to learn. And sometimes you might also question yourself, am I really a slut? Then when you review back, no, I didn't do things that way, right? So, and again, how do you define a slut? Different people have different definition on it. So it also
Correct.
takes a lot of self-confidence to know, to feel empowered, like who you are,
Yeah.
and be comfortable with it. Yeah.
And that was a form of manipulation, for sure.
Mm,
That was like a form
mm.
of guilt. It's a form of manipulation. And if they were
Yeah.
kind of to like push you to do something, but they say it in a nice way in the beginning, like, oh, come
Yeah.
on, let's do it, lah, come lah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
coercion too, especially if you're
Yeah.
already like, I don't want it. So yeah, so I'm glad you dodged a bullet. And you were like, nope.
Again, you know, we are not 18, right? So I think as you grow older, you know your boundaries better, you know who you are better. That's why you know, like you say, who are the people that you want to be in your circle, and who are the people you don't want it to be.
Yes.
At this age of life, we wouldn't want dramas and people who don't even know who they are, and don't even know what is respect. Yeah. So I think it's
Yeah.
really important who you allow into your life.
Correct. There's this
Okay.
quote that I saw: don't have relationship problems with people you're not in a relationship with. That's also like an important
So
one.
right. So right. Okay. So again, you know, being a woman in this conservative society, in your opinion, do you think there is difference with the narrative of how women should be in Malaysia versus outside Malaysia?
Yeah. I think like in general, the narrative, I mean, different, I mean, essentially this narrative is the same, as about
Okay.
like what I said earlier about like, like the purity, wanting to stay
Okay.
pure, wanting to please our partners and all this
Yeah.
stuff. In Malaysia, I just remembered it being advertised in newspaper, in magazines about like, oh, to make yourself white down there, brighter, this like That if you have pigmentation in between your thighs, it means that it's ducky. I can't remember what's ducky in English, but it's like it's dirty. You're just dirty. And so I was just like,
Okay.
oh. But yeah, also being tight. Otherwise, if you're not being a certain way, then you're not attractive or whatever that may be, right? It's very unhealthy in that way, and also you don't know if it's safe or not to whatever it
Yeah,
is.
true. So I would want to say, do you behave differently in Malaysia, like a conservative society, versus when you're in let's say a Western country?
Do I believe in this narrative?
Do you behave differently?
Oh, um, I think, I mean, I don't go outside of the country much. Oh, but like online, I guess
Yeah.
I would, in a way, I kind of behave differently in that I guess I am more choosy in the words that I speak or how I speak, but essentially the way I think, truthful towards myself, and my whole idea about sex positivity and sexual empowerment is the same language that I use overseas with international people versus here. I try to, as much as I can, to just break that cycle. Being in Malaysia and being that conservative country, like I break that cycle. So I will still have conversations such as this about sexual empowerment, but of course the way I speak is not going to be blatantly in your face of like sex and everything like that. But I kind of say it a different way, but I still want to push for the same messaging.
Okay.
But it's more me questioning, when someone come up to me and ask me this question, I'm like, oh, but why do you think this way? Like I throw it back at them.
Mm.
um, yeah. I hope that answers the
Okay.
question.
Okay. Okay. So you think, with what we have been fed by the media and society here in Malaysia, how do you then empower yourself as well as women around you?
Yeah. How do I empower myself is, again, the people who I surround yourself with. There's this term that I really love. It's called, um, your circle of influence. So the people who you
Mm.
surround yourself with, the women who I surround yourself with, especially, are women, that are really inspirational to me. They really inspire me to do better, to make myself push better, and they're really also sex positive. So that really helps in normalizing conversations that I have around sex and sexuality. So that's definitely important. I also have female mentors that not only
Mm.
mentor me in the sense of like, career, but also in life, of relationship, and they teach me so much about marriage and,
Mm.
with children and being mothers and stuff. Even though I myself am not a mother, but I've learned so much from the women and the
Mm.
experience. There's so much wisdom in that. And when it comes to sort of empowering other women and how I kind of help in that, I think, yeah, unlearning everything that I've been taught, surrounding myself with women who empowers me, but also sort of creating a sex positive community. I think that's why I love my page and the community that I've created, Just Explains. A community that is really empowering, a safe space for women to come together and share their stories. That's how I kind of, you know, and
Yeah,
also
I
encouraging
think
women to share.
yeah, I think that is really important. Yesterday, I was like having dinners with two of my girlfriends, married girlfriends, and we are talking about, sometimes sex is really not spoken enough, and sometimes people just have very small issue, but because
Mm.
it's not being solved and not um, they are afraid to share it, and it actually builds up to serious problem. And we have seen so much of sexless marriage that actually maybe started with very small issue, right? It can be because of resentment, it can be because of uh, uh, anxiety, it can be because of stress, but because it's not spoken enough and it's not communicated in between the couple. And sometimes women also, like yesterday when I was talking to my girlfriend was saying, oh, I have this problem, but I have never spoken to anybody about it until you brought up this topic. I said, yeah, and this is a small issue. I mean, sometimes we're just talking about vaginal dryness, right? Like,
Mm.
it's a challenge, but it's not a huge issue. Like, if you
Mm.
get a good quality lubricants, you solve your problem immediately. But sometimes because it's not spoken enough, and and maybe people are very shy to talk about it, right? Oh, I have vaginal dryness kind of issue, and it builds up. They started to feel pain in sex and doesn't want to make love, and eventually becomes sexless marriage, and eventually it leads to other issues. So I think, yeah, we should really try to normalize conversation like this. It's just small thing, but talking about it actually make people feel it's okay to share. It's not
Yeah.
such a big deal. And
No.
sometimes we also talk about sexual fantasy. So we are like sharing about how I wear certain I mean, my girlfriend was sharing that how she wears certain costume and things like that to impress. So it makes you think that, oh yeah, maybe I should also put some effort in my sex relationship rather than just being lazy about it, right? So sex actually, sexuality, all this leads, I mean, at this age, especially when as you age, penetration might not be possible anymore. How are you going to build a different kind of relationship or intimacy with your partner? So I think there's so much of challenge that not talked about. So maybe what is your advice to women and men out there on how can they find empowerment within themselves and their sexuality?
I would say first and foremost, like be kind to yourself and be gentle. It's definitely not easy to, especially now all the things that we've been talking today. It might be for some of us who are watching right now might be like, oh my god, this is a new concept. Like this is too much. How I'm like in my 30s, 40s, 50s. How can I kind of change? But just understanding that these are like thoughts and ideas that been planted in you for 30, 40, 50, 20 years, right? So it's like really be patient with yourself and unlearn all of these things, and as you go on, yeah, just be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself. Another thing I wanted to say is just be curious
Mm,
and explore. I think you were
yes.
talking about your girlfriends wearing outfits and stuff like that. So if it's something that you're curious with as a way to
Yeah.
kind of spice up the bedroom, or just you yourself, whether not just think about your partner so much, but also think about what is exciting to you too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then who knows, wearing the outfit and the costume might not just be exciting to your partner to look at, but also exciting to you, because suddenly you're like, oh my god, like I'm in this different space of frame of mind. I look hot, different from my usual outfit and stuff. So that would be empowering for you too. and
Yeah.
and the most important thing is that whatever it is, that something needs to be changed and you're aware of that. And that in itself, it's a huge thing, because a lot of us go through
Mm,
life without even knowing that there's something
yes.
wrong, and we don't talk
Yes.
about it. But the fact that you're
Yes.
aware, that's beautiful in
Yes.
itself. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really a process of discovering as well. When you're at your 20s, your 30s, 40s, 50s, it will be totally different. And you are keep on evolving and also learning, like what Jasmine said, you need to stay curious. And sometimes it might not turn out good, it might turn out bad, right? My girlfriend was saying she was like trying to dress up long hair because she always had short hair. And she was like standing at the corner, the husband thought, wow, is that a ghost or what? Why are you not, you
Oh,
know, putting long hair? So sometimes it doesn't turn out good. But when you reflect back, that is how it is, the process of discovery. Sometimes you come up with something very positive. Sometimes it might not be so positive, but that's life, right?
yeah, it's a hit and
Okay.
miss, and that's okay. Just enjoy the
Yeah.
process and laugh.
Yeah. So I think sometimes people have um unrealistic expectation in their mind, especially when we are being exposed to so much of all these romantic drama series that
Yeah,
is actually, even the relationship itself is unrealistic, right? How can
right.
that person always be there, like come at the right time and things like that? It's unrealistic. And when your partner is not there all the time, you will like, oh, he's not he doesn't care me enough and things like that. I think sometimes watching too much of Korean movie or things like that might also set unrealistic expectation for women, I would think, on your romantic relationship. Like how watching too much of pornography will set unrealistic expectation for men to think how they should perform. I should have a heart on for 60 minutes, all the time. And whenever they, their penis get get softer, they will think that, oh, maybe I'm having a erectile dysfunction and things like that. So it takes a lot of education to really make you feel empowered, I guess.
Definitely.
Okay, so thank you so much, Jasmine. Any other final say before we end today's Facebook Live?
I would say I really enjoy talking to you, Yann, and I'm really excited for all the upcoming episodes that we'll be doing together. So everyone should check that out.
Yes. So I think follow Jasmine at her IG, Jess Explain. I think I always love, sometimes even her tips, I've applied it myself, because sometimes maybe we have not encountered situation like this, but when we do, we know, okay, this is how we should behave and how we should react if we would encounter something like this. So we have another 9 episodes to go. So every 3 weeks, I will be having this Better Sex, Better Life conversation with Jasmine. So hopefully we are able to normalize sexual conversation, and hope that this Facebook Live will also benefit a lot of couple and a lot of individual that know better about yourself and your sexuality. Okay, so thank you very much, Jasmine. Hope to see you again.
See you soon.
Okay, bye. Bye, everyone.